I feel rather strange. It's not my house, but it is my job to say welcome, everybody. We're delighted that you could join us for this conversation today. My name is Lisa Koenigsberg, and I'm the founder of Initiatives in Art and Culture, and I'm delighted to have been asked to moderate this discussion about the evolving meaning of precious. And my co-panelists today are Paola, I'm going to do it in order from my extreme left, Paola De Luca, founder and creative director of the Futurist, Adriano, head of the Center for Gemstone and Jewelry Design at the University of Minas Gerais, State and Brand and Product Development at Cruzeiro Mine, Raluca Anghel, the Director of External Affairs and Industry Relations at the Natural Diamond Council, and Francesca Manfredi, Head of Sustainable Innovation, Watches and Jewelry at Kering. And with apologies, Ken Scarratt was not able to join us today, although he will be referred to. And what I'd first, before anything, like to do is also extend my thanks to Gaetano Cavaliere for also accepting, if you will, the thought, the chisel, the hand, the touch of the artisan, which may be a bit of what this talk or this panel discussion represents. And I think, please, if you'd go next, when we talk about precious in any context, one of the things is there has to be an agreed upon context. So you're not going to have industry using something if it isn't already in parlance, generally speaking, in order to be interpreted or thought of. And so I, in CIBJO manner, turned to the OED for the definition of precious. And may I have the next slide, please? Oh, I do it? Oh, gosh, okay. Thank you. Okay, so the lead meaning of precious in the OED is of great moral, spiritual, or other non-material value, beloved, held in high esteem. These are often dimensions that we lose sight of when we are talking about precious, whatever we think that it means, as we'll discover today. Now, our brief in this panel is to discuss the evolving definition of this word, and it read as, used to define objects of great value, the term precious has had special significances where jewelry is concerned, because at least some of the materials of which such products are comprised, typically are considered precious in and of themselves. But what constitutes a precious gemstone or a precious metal? Indeed. And in order to pique your thoughts, I'm going to very quickly show you some images, because this word precious is really a complicated one. More OED for you. And the noun is a dear one, darling, frequently with possessive adjective and as a form of address. Therefore, if you are my precious, you are my darling. Here, there's a pendant, a hair pendant on to, let's see, the viewer's right, the left, a cross by Alan Craxford, showing the most precious being absent, and that is faith. Gold, golden. Two potentially challenged notions of diamond, lab-grown and Koh-i-Noor. Of the sea, perhaps, Jackie Kennedy's pearls, fake, as determined when her estate was inventoried. And these are abalone shells, effectively nothing of particular note, but transformed by virtue of their selection and placement. Again, the ordinary transformed, Vidura and Cerebeltron. Some of them are just stones, or just shells, rather. The black Prince Ruby, which is Spinel, in the crown jewel on the left, and this dazzling red stone, rhodochrosite. Is it not smashing and spectacular? Habsburg crown jewel to your left, those are peridots, and to your right, a dazzling blue stone, Paraíba. Mixed materials, crushed oyster shell as the substrate for these earrings, rock, as you see, for this astonishing bracelet. And here, 2 images of haute joaillerie, Boucheron and Wallace Chang, both of which are using mixed materials and things that would not have been deemed precious. And so, with that as an opening, what I would love to do is just reflexively ask each one of you, right this minute, not in 3 sentences, but a couple of words that to you mean precious. May I start with you?
With pleasure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here at our panel on this very important topic. And I like to start with this picture on, because the picture on the left belongs to one of the jewelry Kering brands, which is Boucheron. And here we see how a waste has been turned into a new precious material. So here we see a clear example of how the definition of precious has evolved over the years. So what is precious today? Is it something which belongs to scarcity, to rarity, or is something which is close to ethics and to what are the values which are important to you as an end consumer? To me today, we have to reflect on this, on what is behind the origin of something, which could be a stone or which could be a metal, but also how those characteristics align with your own values, the generation you represent.
Excuse me, I'm going to cut you short because I asked for 2 or 3 words.
Yes,
and
sorry.
I really meant 2 or 3 words. So Raluca, 2 or 3 words.
She's passionate on preciousness. 2, 3 words. So I thought of 3 words. One is the material. I find the material incredibly important, and in that I'd include scarcity, value, uniqueness. 2 is time, and 3, craftsmanship.
What was the second?
Time.
Ah.
Because there is a lot of work that needs to be entailed within creating precious pieces of beautiful jewelry.
Adriano.
Valuable, objectively, and subjectively.
And Paola.
Society has evolved.
It's a very interesting answer. So with these constructs or these ideas in mind, some of them actually being fixed now and others projecting forward, I am going to ask you some questions based on things that you all raised. So Paola, how important is scarcity in the notion of preciousness?
Well, scarcity is important, but I'd like also to reconnect with Francesca started, when she talked about, ethical and sustainability. First of all, also, I want to thank you, Lisa, CIBJO, Mr. Cavalieri, for inviting me and being in such an amazing panel. So it's an honor and a pleasure. I'm always like a disruptor, so it's an honor for me to be with the adults, sitting down, because I never, even though I'm in my 50s, I feel I'm never an adult. Said that, scarcity, it is important, but it's also important to focus on society changes and consumer changes. So the concept of what was precious is not static. And so starting only from the material, it is a limit. And scarcity, from my perspective, because I'm a disruptor, is also understanding new consumer demand and consumer changes. So it is scarce from my perspective, not to understand consumer demand and be silo in the way we communicate, and we don't, silo meaning always being in closed door among ourselves and not including consumers' culture, in redefining the concept of what's precious. And the concept of being precious is not in the trade, is not in this, on this stage, even though this is an amazing platform. No, it's not even in Vicenza or any show, it's on the streets. So we have to start understanding what is precious for people, thinking about Kering or any other luxury. They've been selling plastic, which might be good or not, for like thousands of euros, because scarcity is also vision, creativity, human intelligence, and art. And I see a lot of concentration on the value of the intrinsic material, which come from the 1900 and beyond, and less attention to the construction, the conception, and the emotion that today consumer wants to say. So, precious and scarcity in all the material is very important, but speaking the language of those that will buy, and that works also for natural diamonds, will make sure that we are on the dot. We are not yet.
Adriano, partially relating to you and partially relating to Paola's question, what about the big four? Ruby, sapphire, emerald, diamond, and semi-precious, such as our quote-unquote semi-precious, which is verboten in CIBJO discourse, but it is nonetheless still out there in contemporary parlance. So we saw that spectacular rhodochrosite, the Paraíba, and I wonder if you want to take on the notion of dominating hierarchies, if you will, and whether, in fact, we're seeing a new day in line with what Paola was suggesting.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to need a few more than 3 words now. Thank you very much for inviting me, and also the CIBJO. It's my pleasure to be here for the first time. And I was noticing that I will be speaking from a supply perspective instead of a demand perspective. So this question that you asked, I will try to step out of my own bias. Of course, as Paola said, is a cultural construct, the value we perceive in gemstones. So take the case for emerald, green. It became the go-to choice of green stone. It has been produced in Colombia for the past 300 years, and it reached here, Europe, the center of the culture at that time, and then it became the prevalent choice of green. Could have been jade if the trade routes and powers were different, right? We could all be revering jade instead of emerald. And may I say, why not tsavorite? Why not tourmaline? We have beautiful green tourmalines. And we, from the supply perspective, we know that an emerald is valuable, a commercial emerald is valuable 5 to 10 times more than a green tourmaline. And why? Why is that? If you look at the materiality of it, the tourmaline is even more stable than the emerald because of the inclusions. So it should last more. And I don't think it's much of a scarcity thing, because you have to have enough production for it to become prominent in the market. So it's a cultural construct, and it seems to be evolving as the society is evolving. So maybe we will have new greens, maybe we will have new reds and new blues. Who knows?
Well, I hear a hint of a discussion to come in your answer, which has to do with empires and trade routes influencing our taste and dominating supply. And that's something I yearn to explore, but I'm going to put it on the back burner and turn to Raluca, if I may, and ask how important are things like certification? For example, knowing the actual nature of the object versus visual impression. For example, gold versus golden, or lab versus natural stone.
The certification is very important as the first part of the beautiful tango, which is what is it that the world of jewelry provides consumers, and what is it that consumers perceive, how they want to use, and all of the emotional experiences that they attach to that. So I'd say is the first person to sort of join the pair to dance, this sort of elements of explaining what exactly is in a piece of jewelry is incredibly important. So consumers understand what's there in front of them. It's the first step for them to start judging before, or maybe at the same time, as how you feel about it. How do you want to use it? What sort of emotional value is it that you connect to it? Their own values. They need to understand what is it that is in front of them, and a bit of part of education. You don't want to be overly conceited in educating your customers. So perhaps there you can even say part of an ongoing conversation of what choices you have made as a jeweler, as a designer, as a brand, what choice of materials you've made. And there I would always bring, in addition to elements such as clear certification, use correct terminology, abide, and there is a little bit of a situation of perception even within the jewelry industry, have certain uniform terminology, so you have global consumers speaking different languages, understanding all the products. After that comes that important, vital, emotional connection to jewelry, because there is almost nothing as emotional, as personal as the choice of a piece of jewelry. For the occasion, for yourself, everything that you want to give life. And it's not just one, because I think a lot of the pieces of jewelry that we talk about, we decide to adorn ourselves, create a lot of personal connections, and then if you have this possibility to pass them on, give them another life. So for that, you need to know what are the core elements that are inside that piece of jewelry. So I would say certification and appropriate terminology is essential for the first step on the dance floor. Then you continue the love affair with jewelry, with your consumers.
Francesca, I know you have a particular interest in education and in creating, if you will, more mechanisms and processes by which we can convey the knowledge that we may have about particular materials and hence objects. Is that something you want to elaborate on as to, potential future use, impact?
Thank you, Lisa, for the question. Definitely, we at Kering Group, we strongly believe in innovation, and it covers both fashion and jewelry houses. And to give you an example of how we further elaborate on the role of education, innovation, and young generations is the Kering Generation Award for Jewelry that we have launched this year, thanks to the collaboration also with CIBJO and Politecnico di Milano. We have involved around the world the 10 best universities offering courses on design and sustainability vertical on jewelry. So you can imagine how deep this scouting has been to rise to a certain level, and startups all over the world already active in this field. Why are we launching and promoting this award since 2018? Because to get closer to young generation and to your future customers, which are already today your customers, because you have to fill them with what they want to receive and what they need in the future collections. You have to be able to listen, and to listen you have to work with them. That's why we create continuous links with different universities, with our brands, which are part, of course, of this award, and we further develop the innovations. Because what is important, and here I build up on what has been already said, my dear colleagues here, is that we have to connect the dots. We cannot work in silos. So us, as representative of the retailer, we have the direct link with the market. So we have a deep touch on what is gonna come, but we have to connect all the parts of the industry, the suppliers, the organizations, and our dear academic world, which fills up with new innovations, but also challenges.
Paola, as the disruptor, you and I bracketing the conversation here physically, I wonder if you'd, something that I see as continuing importance, but perhaps with a different meaning, is the notion of provenance. And provenance. And one of the things, no worries, perhaps my pronunciation. But one of the things I was wondering is, given that we're talking about the new world in which we live and a new set of values, whether reuse, vintage, an object's history, having had such a history, is part of the way we perhaps might be thinking now.
Thank you, Lisa. I hope I will pass the exam. I always feel I'm at school. No, okay. I like the question really. I mean, I like, the point of provenance and also the connection with vintage jewelry and the old vintage wave that we have from fashion, design, furniture, and of course, jewelry and watches. Definitely this new wave of vintage, it's associated, yes, to design, but also culture. So we are going back to a preservation and celebration of who we are as human beings, as culture, as nations, to keep our individuality in a world where we are facing global turmoil, new equilibrium are, now in the making, everything is shifting, and there is some kind of there are many uncertainties, and people is trying to reconnect to their identity. So our past and heritage is very important. So the celebration and appreciation of vintage and historical pieces is dual purpose. One is cultural journey and really understanding, but also the appreciation of product when they were done in a certain way, because of course, fast fashion, fast design, fast jewelry diluted the quality of product. That's another element. It's not a coincidence that natural diamonds now, they are being upcycled from jewelry from the early 1900s. So that's why European cut diamonds are in demand, and there is a big business around it. So the business is not just about the material itself and the intrinsic value of the diamonds, but the value of the historical value and the craftsmanship. I want to connect to the point of, of the emerald, which is very interesting. I think the provenance is important because of the story behind, the origin in terms of the local culture, the community. That's what I think it's important. I don't like to talk about myself usually, but when I had the honor of working as a global design director for Rio Tinto, we launched Diamond with the Story. A Diamond with the Story was promoting Aboriginal culture that was actually helping, they were like helping community in Australia with the Argyle mine, and that's the story that we brought to consumer. So it's important that we embedded the culture and the story in the journey, so people don't just buy an object, but buy everything is behind. So the origins of Colombia, it's very interesting, besides the fact that the light the emeralds have is different than jade. So emerald, they have a mysterious light. They have something that is historical, ancient, and ancestral that is, appealing to the world. So you see, I get more and more emotional, because that's what Precious is about. Precious is about that. It's about culture. And you, Lisa, you've been bringing culture to the industry for many years. This is very precious. And this is what I think we need. And that's what it is, provenance. Provenance is not just a geographic location, but it's a cultural location. It is a value. It is a motivation. And ultimately is the aspiration where we want to be, where we want to go. So that's what it is. Knowing where you're coming from to get where you want to go.
Well, with that future forward notion in mind, I'm going to regress us and explore a bit more this notion of provenance, because it used to be somewhat fixed. And of course, there is the nomenclature project, CIBJO's nomenclature project, which has grappled with the definition of provenance. But there are also other committees that have looked at it. And sometimes provenance deals specifically with an ownership lineage, if you will. And given the Natural Diamond Council's engagement in, yes, pun intended, renown of stones, whose stone something is, what culture produced it. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the power that that more traditional perspective on provenance might have, or not at this time.
It has a huge impact, and I was thinking as Paola was explaining the connection to culture, that's why I think coming out in front and explaining everything that is in that absolutely beautiful piece of jewelry gets to honor all the organizations that invest in those local communities, in society, throughout all the work that they do, and telling sort of why is it that you've been in a certain place to recover certain stones, to start telling their story, connect them to the past, is incredibly important, so they understand that. So whilst, of course, if you have joint terms that would put an umbrella across a lot of organizations that would do different things, that joint term would also create a level playing field. And on that, you give the opportunity to each and every organization to contribute to it and to tell their story, to add that individual element, because that's where you bring a huge difference over there. So definitely telling the story of provenance, telling the story of your organization, the people in your organization, the local communities that you work with, the causes that you believe in is a huge part of the value that you're bringing to consumers. Because of course, our consumers also have very different sets of values. I always contextualize that in their own cultures. Then we all travel. Everybody that is here, we've lived in a different country. We ended up speaking different languages, connecting with people. We're the sum of all the experiences and people that we've met and we've gone through.
And I'm sorry, then I jump into, we help communities. We help communities. The industry educates community locally. We help people in Surat, we help people in Africa, and those are stories that are untold to the consumers, only occasionally when we talk about stones, but we are talking to the trade. And the times that we talk to consumer don't buy an object, they buy not the story, the meaning and the activities that we have behind. Sorry, but
No, I think that's great.
That's how I am.
And I couldn't agree more, and I think that's such a missed opportunity in the world of retail jewelers, missed opportunity. From our perspective, the Natural Diamond Council, we have all those stories, whether it's on our website, we bring this to consumers, but we can't do it alone because there are a lot of consumers out there. So partnering retailers, jewelers to help tell that story, add the element of value. Maybe they pick specific causes that they believe in more, their brands, and creating that connection is incredibly important. So definitely contribute to that story. It adds so much to your consumer experience.
Adriano, I'd love to turn to you because with regard to stones and stories, you have connection to Brazilian tourmaline, rubellite that are not only extraordinary visually, but that are rich with story. And I wonder if that's something that you'd like to comment on.
Oh, very much so. What this very precious panel here is saying is we need to connect the dots by awareness and education. So once people get aware of the sources, they will tend to choose those stories over other stories. So people all know the allure of emeralds. They have their backstory, it's well known. Some people may not know the allure of jade. So if they do, they will also choose this. So Brazil has a huge history of colored gems production. But unfortunately, not much of those stories are known. So I'm happy all the time to tell this story because it's of cultural relevance to us as producing countries. And again, I thank you for being a voice of such a country here.
But do you see other ways, for example, of conveying that sense of origin, special origin to the client or to the consumer?
Yes. Specifically, mining is a very cost-bearing activity, as you all know. So when you mine correctly, you can tell this story too. So people relate to this product as of provenance of a good place. They can choose, well, I want to support this product that was done right, or I can be oblivious of the source. So that's how I see provenance from a broader view from a producing country. Was it clear?
Provenance for diamonds? What about the stories associated therewith? Do you find that an important element of the narrative and the construct of preciousness?
They
Raluca.
are very important. For once, we worked on a book to tell the whole story of the Cruzeiro mine.
Yeah.
Just went out. The mine has been there for 80 years now, 80, and it's just the first time the story was told about this important source. So it's cultural collaboration to the industry.
I wanted to add that precious natural gemstones, we sometimes forget they're absolutely an encapsulation of the Earth's history. You're connected to that land, you're connected to the history that was there before we were born, and now you get to hold it, adorn yourself with it, mark it, and connect with it in different ways. So even telling that story of the uniqueness of such a unique gift that we get from the earth. And with that unique gift, you do it in a proper way and you help and partner with all those local communities. It's such a strong story to tell. And that for me, because this is one of my values, I absolutely connect that with preciousness.
Now, what about for younger consumers? We're talking about a lot of new ideas. I mean, it used to be, for example, that I'd show you a 4-carat round brilliant, and that would be the epitome of precious. Now, it may still be, but we may also have synonymous visions. What about young people, Francesca? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, when we relate to young people, we see that, unfortunately, of course, not all of them, but they are far from our industry. And this is a pity because there is a lot of magic in what we sell, in what we care about, but thanks to the huge communication they receive from their own channels, like social media, their own network, which are not well managed by us, I mean by the industry, not by the four of us, but they are looking for ethic. They are very much linked to what is your company doing to grant us a decent future. And this is not me saying that. We did a deep research on Gen Z around the world, a deep panel, and the result is mostly that. They are still very much interested in rings, but when you ask them, is a diamond precious to you? Is that a diamond is a diamond linked to something precious? Yes, but we know that there are a lot of emissions connected with them. So we are seeing that their perception of jewelry and preciousness is evolving. This doesn't mean that the natural diamonds are the enemy. Absolutely. What the message they are conveying to us that, why don't you engage us? Why don't you bring us to your world? Why don't you tell us what you do and what's the magic behind? And I totally share your point of view, Raluca and Paola as well. We have to really let people enter in our world. We should open the door and show them where the preciousness sits.
Paola, I'm looking at your wrist, and I see there a bracelet that is of mixed materials. And I'm wondering, in thinking about preciousness and the world we live in now, which is one of many forces and much tumult. How do we think about mixed materials now and the notion of precious? So if I show you, for example, a diamond set in crushed oyster shells, or you know, gold and silver, which of course is a traditional mix with a gemstone, what prevails in the thinking? How much does that mixture matter? Does it matter at all? Is that the new precious?
Thank you, Lisa. First of all, jewelry had been mixed medium from ancient times. You know, tribes and chiefs of tribes and women of every culture, they've been wearing beads, shells, bones, any rocks. In fact, that's part of history. I'm sure that in Colombia and in South America, Amazonic tribes were wearing certain stones, and this is what makes it precious. Preciousness is the mythology, is the origin of where humanity is coming from, and the narrative that makes us who we are and that makes us closer to earth and God and spirituality. That is precious. It's not new that I'm wearing a mixed medium, because you know very well, Lisa, that you are an academic. From recently, I would say, René Lalique and the Art Nouveau, where at that time they were disruptor. They were using mixed medium already. Fulco di verdura, I mean, name it. I mean, it's like there's nothing new. Every time we feel like, well, now it's new that men are wearing jewelry. Men have been wearing jewelry since the beginning of times. And from the aristocracy, from street people, from the soldiers, everybody were wearing jewelry. And that's what it is. So what is preciousness? Preciousness, it's associated to the evolution of human being, of humanity. And that's where there is all the value, and really and we have to just decode and read the patterns that have been there all along historically, from an historical and anthropologic standpoint of view. And I want to reconnect to what Francesca said about young people. I don't see any young people here, not even on this stage. So how can we pretend that these people are looking at us where we are, everybody's old on this stage, me included. I'm Gen Xers, okay? So how can we think or assume that we are attractive to people that are in their 20s or 30s when we are like all old? Honestly, me included. So
you're forgetting the value of vintage.
No, I mean, so the point is, but the good news is, there is a good news. The good news is we are in the era of fluidity, and fluidity is not just associated to gender, but is associated to ageless time. So the osmosis, the cultural osmosis and the generational osmosis that we need shouldn't be us teaching them, but also learning from natives, because we didn't grow up with this. They have different semantic, different languages. So we are here, even our languages is unattractive. So we want to sell jewelry, and giustamente, Francesca is saying, well, these people are not interested. No, these people are interested because this generation is wearing jewelry more than any other generation, men and women, and they are layering and displaying on their body. It's a spectacle of showing jewelry and just becoming more and more tribal in the way they layer jewelry. The thing is, we don't talk to each other. And why? Because we are not on TikTok. Now, should we do it? No, not necessarily I'm going to become a TikToker, but why don't we talk to these people? Why don't we get an ambassador from these people and not have like individual room? We are in the age of parallel realities and convergences. Let's converge.
Well, I'm all for Théâtre de Chardin, which is everything that rises must converge. And so what I need to converge us back on is the thing itself. What is precious. And so what I would love to do is have you each think about, based on this conversation, with its biases, but with the liberations that it's provided, because there are perspectives here that are traditionally not part of a discussion of what constitutes precious. And we have esteemed authorities here who deal with what I might say is a more conventional notion of the precious, one that in some senses is perhaps being contested. What are the biggest changes in terms of thinking about precious? And I am going to go to you, Adriano, with the Cruzeiro book, with the Paraíba that we saw, and ask you, what do you think now is redefining the way we are thinking about it, whether we are young or old?
Very good and open question. Well, the copper bearing is a good example. It bears the name of origin, which is a Brazilian state, Paraíba, to a color. And we can have that same precious material from elsewhere, different location. That was gemologically accepted. So I refer back to my original precious construct, which is, we can be objective, but it can be subjective as well. And as society evolves with education and awareness, those things evolve as well. So,
with Paraíba, you also have the scarcity issue.
Yes, we have a scarcity, we have a uniqueness of the color, but that's not to the point that I'm making. We have beautiful, scarce materials that don't reach that high value. We have alexandrite. We have zircon. We have a slew of gemstones that never reached it. And so if you look at the scarcity alone, I don't think it tells the history. I think there is a great deal of storytelling, marketing, and market construct.
So, Raluca, just picking up a little bit on this notion of the precious geography. Does, for example, where the diamond is mined and how it is mined make a difference to its preciousness? If I have a Botswana stone and I can tell a Botswana story, is that enhancing what is perceived now as precious about my stone?
I would say it depends. It depends on what's important to the consumer, and that purchaser of jewelry, what is it that it is sort of bought for and what you're interested in. I don't think precise locations just per se are what would bring that element of precious, but I think telling the story of that beautiful stone, where it's been traveling, what has it been done. And I wanted to pick on something for me, even more than scarcity, is that uniqueness. So for example, for natural diamonds, I absolutely love all the elements that are embodied in a natural stone, all the inclusions. They tell such a specific part of the history of the earth. And each and every diamond, I know we've been trying to put them within a context of 4 Cs. I think we completely do them injustice, because there are so much more than that, and all the elements, all the features that are encapsulated in that. You don't have one diamond, just like our fingerprints. Each and every one of them are very different. What the story of my stone, I was lucky enough to find love of my life and have a partnership and a future together. And the stone that I had received as a proposal was so much more. It was an absolute stone of storytelling. I have a central diamond surrounded by 2 emeralds. My favorite color forever will be green. So it's history, all this stone I will ever touch, surrounded by me and him sort of put together, that's value. I'm not interested in the origin of the stone, but I'm interested in the origin of the nature of that stone. That's me, that's why it's personal. So I think for retailers, jewelers, again, you have all this arsenal in your portfolio. Use it wisely, use it correctly. You have all these storytelling elements. Find your own story and share that with consumers. And that, I would combine it afterwards with design. And that creates that fluidity of jewelry and fluidity of precious. So I would embed it in a wider story, not just specific per a country.
And Francesca, so one of the things that we chatted about is new notions about colored stones and about preciousness and how education can play a role in promoting that. What education do you see and how do you see it as being effective for conveying what our new understanding is?
Well, I would split these into two different aspects. First one, we would need education in the industry, because we all have different skills, and thanks to the associations that we have, like CIBJO, the Watch and Jewelry Initiative, RGC, etc., we can share, and we have to share the education, because, for example, there are some companies which are very much advanced on sustainability that could help others. And there are some companies which are very much into the upstream that could really plug in how sustainability serves the education for the future generations and for the industry. Then there is a second part, which is even more important, and is always linked to the young generation. Why don't we offer specific courses to the young generation on jewelry, sustainability, origin? And this is something that surely should be done at the university level, because there is where the future leaders have to be trained and to enter into the companies. Because today, for example, sorry if I go back always to sustainability because it's my field of action, but generally speaking, sustainability is linked to the image of an engineer. But an engineer knows just a specific part, while we need professionals who knows of business, communication, marketing, product, origin. And so we have to create professionals which are vertical on this topic, which becomes passionate, and the day they enter into a company, don't go to the stone director, say, hey guys, stop buying emeralds and create a plastic stone. Would you ever buy $10,000 for a plastic stone ring? I would never pay for that. But sometimes, and Paola told me that in other occasions, we've read about those stupid things. How can we imagine such a very important topic transformed into such a scarce methodology? So education is something that really has to enter into DNA of education and covering all the aspects that are related to business. Because let's not forget that business is what makes all of us proceed for the good.
I'd like to throw out an idea, which is not really my place as opposed to a question. But, and I throw it down to you, Paola. We talk about education, we talk about young people, we talk about changing perceptions. Really, does that start not necessarily at school, at a certain age, but much younger? Are we talking about societal attitudes towards particular things and the introduction of joy into learning? I realize this is like a hokey question.
But I want to clarify something though, Lisa, that maybe I don't want to have a misperception of what I said about age. This is an era where cultural osmosis and fluidity means that we are extremely relevant, especially older generation, to kind of, bridge the legacy between the new and the old. So we are very present, we are responsible. but we have to walk with these people, I mean, whoever they are, could be young children, could be Gen Z, could 20s or 30s. Like Francesca, I like what Francesca is pushing about education. And education happens inside the university, but happens also with marketing communication. It happens on social media. Today I had the panel and some people, you know, someone, a relevant voice in the industry was saying what influencers should do, you know, now, you know. And people want to be educated. It cannot just be a bunch of pictures on Instagram. People want to learn. They want authentic value. They want real value. And so what you're, and also the joy that you're saying, the joy economy or the joy culture is making things democratic, even in the way we're communicating. I don't know if if this is the platform, but when, you know, the president, you know, Mr. Cavalieri and the head of CIBJO, and with this amazing association and an important role, we have to, it's a big responsibility, and I think we have to start speaking people's language in order to make sure they understand. Otherwise, it stays with the politician and us in the trade, but very niche. Because people has a hard time really to, what is ESG? They have no idea. I mean, you have to have a master in understanding. Now, I'm not saying that we have to lower our standard inside communication. I'm saying that we have to find a structure to bridge the knowledge of the specialists talking to these people. And then it's part of education and making it witty and fun and make sure that they're happy to learn. Because the old way of like, oh my God, now I have to do this, they're not going to be with us. They're gone. They're gone.
Well, yeah.
Can I add something on education? The reason for which I always go back to let's define what's value, what's precious, what's fine. Fine jewelry as a concept does not get defined, and you can see it absolutely loosely used out there. Part of education is also representing real value and also helping consumers understand, again, the type of jewelry that they're buying and everything that goes, all the metals, all the stones, anything that goes into it, they need to understand that. So I think it's a role that we must all assume within the industry to correctly represent the term of value, express and explain stones, metals. That's fundamentally extremely important. And you asked me about the nature or origin of stones, how they were manufactured. I think this is part of that education, and it's absolutely such a vital role to carry. Alignment is important, so we can all speak the same term versus loosely use specific terms, and clarifying exactly how things were manufactured. That's such an important investment in consumer understanding, their protection, and certainly them appreciating everything that they decide to buy.
Well, I see that it is 16 minutes after 1. And so in closing, because I must, I'd like to say 2 things. First of all, in no way did I mean the comment about age as a pastiche, but rather a tribute to having been introduced to the things that I love at points in my life that were well before what we think of as formalized activity, and that introducing them as part of the landscape, as part of something to savor, can lead people then to wish to go farther and be more precise and become more learned in their inquiry. So that really was about introduction of that which is meaningful from moment 1, because we learn in every single instant. It's hopefully at this moment, but when you shake my hand, what have you. And I think one of the things that has come about as a result of this discussion, whilst on the one hand, not a fixed new definition, because for sure we have not arrived at that, what we have done is to show that a an established fixed notion of precious as being something that is confined, say, to 2 or 3 metals and a hierarchy of certain stones, is, even within the context of a structured, if you will, industry discourse, something that is now being re-examined. And that the stories of extraction, if you will, the place where something is produced, its quality, irrespective of its label. So it may be an absolutely heart-stopping spinel. It's not a ruby. Now, I realize spinels are rising rapidly, so that may not be the best comparison, but nonetheless, that we are more inclusive, that we are less hierarchical in an absolute sense, allowing room for quality, and also for understanding a broader notion of a jewel, which is critical because that's happening in the creative community. So how can we evaluate a stone that may, for example, be set in crushed oyster shell, that may, in fact, win a prize at Gemstone? So ethics is important, sourcing, origin, quality, receptivity to other people's tastes, and the idea that we too are shaped, we do not only make. I hope that although we've left you with a lot of questions, perhaps they're intriguing. And I'll drop one more thought, which is that much of this discussion about what is precious or scarce relates to questions about intellectual property and what it is that we decide we're going to look at that is important to protect and to ensure is original. So with those broader thoughts, I'd also like to thank, again, Gaetano Cavaliere, because this is certainly an extraordinary conversation to have had, and I hope that it will prompt you to question, explore, and look widely. Thank you very much.